Hello guys, this is Oroth and a warm welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're gonna look at an updated Crusader build where we're gonna use some of the new essences to see how much our damage will improve at the training dummy. So let's start by looking at the skills we're gonna use, and for primary attack I'm using the Sacred Fire. I'm gonna use Draw and Quarter. We are using Condemn. We're using Judgment, and we are also using Holy Banner. So these are the skills we are using. Let's continue by looking at the essences. And first let's have a look at the helmet slot where we are going to use Errant Ignition. And what it says is that Holy Banner now mounts a standard of flames to your back that bolsters the primary attacks of all nearby allies to burn enemies. And we have shown this essence before and you have probably used it. And we can see here that now when I use Holy Banner, whenever I use a primary attack, I will apply a fire banner dot on the target. You can see there under the health bar of the training dummy that I will apply a dot whenever I attack it with a primary attack. And what's good to mention here is that this will also work with my summons. So if I am able to have a couple of summons, and they will be under the influence of Fire Banner. Whenever they attack the dummy or another target, they will also apply a Fire Banner dot. And of course it also works with the teammates in my party and their summons. So that's very good to know about this essence. The next slot is the chest slot, and here we're gonna use Akarat's Rebuke. You know about this chest as well. What it says is that Condemn now fills your soul with Valor's Retribution for 5 seconds, causing every primary attack to unleash a lightning bolt at your target, dealing damage to all nearby enemies. So let's just have a quick look what it looks like. If I now use Condemn and then I attack the target, you can see lightning striking from above whenever I use the primary attack. So that's how this essence works. In the next slot, which is the shoulder slot, we are using one of the new essences, and it's called Upturned Gaze. And what it says is that Judgment now grants you an aura of judgment, marking nearby enemies with a cross, slowing them and causing them to suffer additional damage when struck by your primary attack. So if I equip this essence and then I use Judgment, you can see now that there's a cross above the dummy, and whenever I hit it, it will also get hit from above by Judgment. So that's how this essence works. In the pants slot we're using Light Striders, and what it does is that it gives us 2 summons when we use Draw and Quarter. So now when I use Draw and Quarter I will summon 2 summons, and now if I also use Fire Banner you can see that these summons are applying the Fire Banner dot. So very good for this build. The next essence we're going to look at is the first main hand, and it's called the Bristle. And what it says is that Sacred Fire now also hurls waves of flame, dealing damage to all enemies in their path. So if I use the primary attack now, you can see that there will be these waves of flame, and they are also ranged, so you can hit enemies from afar. So that's how this essence works. The next essence we're going to look at is the first offhand, and it's also one of the new essences, and it says Resplendent Mane, that's the name of it, And what it says is that Sacred Fire also increases your primary attack speed by 10% for 2 seconds, stacking up to a maximum of 3 times. And if I put this on and I now attack the dummy, you can see up to the left that I get 3 stacks of a certain buff that increases my attack speed. And this is a huge buff. 30% extra attack speed is very important. So a super nice new essence that we're using. The next essence we're gonna have a look at is the second main hand, and what it says is Horn Splitter. And what it does is that Sacred Fire now ignites enemies, burning them over 2 seconds. So basically it applies a dot effect to the target. So if I now attack the training dummy, you will see under the health bar that I'm applying a fire dot whenever I hit the target. So also a super good essence with this specific build. And of course, in the last and final slot, in the second offhand, we're gonna use Torrential Refrain. And what it says is that Condemn immediately triggers all continual damage on the targeted hits, causing them to take the remaining damage instantly. So you can probably see a pattern here, and this is something I have showcased already in my previous videos. But the point here is that we want to apply as many dots as possible onto the target, and then with the help of Akarat's Rebuke, Condemn and Torrential Refrain, we will resolve all the remaining dot damage each time we hit it with our primary attack. And in order for us to be able to apply as many dot effects as possible, we need the Fire Banner and we need a lot of summons under the influence of Fire Banner. So let's just try here quick, summon a few summons, and you can see now under the health bar that whenever I attack it, there are a lot of dots disappearing, and then they are constantly reapplied. So the idea is that I hit the target with the primary attack, and before I hit it again, it has been struck many times, but by a lot of summons, so that there are many dots that will be resolved each hit. So that's how we are able to deal a lot of damage with this build. So these are the essences I'm using. Let us also take a quick look at the legendary gems. For the 5-star gems, I'm using Echoing Shade, I'm using Blood-Soaked Jade, Roiling Consequence, and Bottled Hope. And what I can recommend here is that you get at least a rank 3 Echoing Shade, because that will give you 2 clones. And as I've explained to you, we need a lot of summons to apply more dots. And this is one of the strongest gems in this build. There are other gems as well, of course. We have 2-star gems like Mother's Lament, we have Pain Clasp, and we have Fervent Fang. And finally, we also have a 1-star gem, which is the new Misery Elixir. And what it does is that it prolongs the durations of harmful effects. And this is of course very good with this build because we are using a lot of dot effects. And the longer we are able to prolong these dot effects, the higher the damage will be each time we use Condemn and Torrential Refrain on the target. Because, for example, if I apply a dot effect that has 3 ticks of damage at base value, if I am able to increase the harmful effect duration a lot on this dot effect, instead of 3 ticks I will perhaps get 6 or 7 ticks, meaning that whenever I resolve the remaining ticks, the remaining dot damage, I deal double the damage from that dot effect. So it's very important with this build to prolong the harmful effect duration. That's why we are using Misery Elixir. And we can also then jump forward and look at the set pieces I am using. So first of all, I am using 4 pieces of Vitus Urge. And I use this for 2 reasons. One reason is of course that it prolongs the beneficial effect duration. So the Roiling Consequence buff or the any other type of buff I'm receiving will be prolonged thanks to this 2-piece effect. But even more important is the attack speed bonus that I get, which says that whenever I receive a buff or whenever I use a buff myself, I will increase the attack speed by 30%. And this is of course important because when I am able to increase my attack speed, I will be able to hit the target more often, resolving all of these dots. So attack speed is one of the most important attributes for this specific build, and for many other builds as well, of course. But what is also interesting to mention here is the other set pieces I'm using, and I've already told you the importance of prolonging harmful effects. So that's why I am using 2 pieces of Baron for starters. And if we look here, we can see that when I equip 2 pieces of Baron, I will increase harmful effect duration by 30%. So all of the dots I'm applying, they will be prolonged by 30% thanks to 2 pieces of Baron. And the last set I'm using is 2 pieces of Angmet. And if we look what it does, is that it says that the duration of your additional Ignite status is increased by 30%. And of course this might be a little bit difficult to understand what it means, but what it means is that it prolongs the duration of any burn effects that you apply to a target. So it's not as good as Two Pieces Baron that prolongs all types of harmful effects, but with this build, this two-piece effect is very good, because if you think about it, all the dots from the fire banner, they are burn effects, so they will be affected by this. And we also have Sacred Fire that will be affected by this, and we also have the dot effect from Roiling Consequence that will be affected by this. So this is a very strong two-piece set option for this specific build. So yeah, this is what the core build looks like. We're also gonna take a quick look here at my charm. Nothing special here, only 2% damage on the skills we're using. Almost all of them at least. I would not invest too much resources in the charms because it's too much RNG, so I rather invest it in other things like my legendary gems, etc. What's also of course important to look at is the reforges of my item, and here there are maybe other reforges that could work a little bit better. I know for example attack speed is very important with this specific build, but this reforge that I'm showing you here is a very all-round summon archetype reforge that works with many builds that I enjoy to play, and it works also super well with this specific build. So if you want a very good reforge on your character that is quite all-round, and if you also like the summoner archetype, I can really recommend these reforges here. What's also important to mention is that with this build I'm also using this new eternal magical attributes, or whatever they are called, the ones that you can find in the Terror Rifts, and you can see here that there is one really good affix here that says Holy Banner increases attack speed by 5% for you and nearby allies, and this is stacking up to 4 times, so up to 20% extra attack speed, which is of course a super strong buff. The banner is already amazing, but with this affix it becomes even better. And what's interesting here to mention is that if you look here on the items I am using, I have not been able to find a good roll. Look at the chest piece here, for example, it only has this one affix. So there are some room for improvements, of course, in this build. But this also shows how powerful these affixes can be. Because I know that there has been a lot of frustration about these new Terror Rifts, and that it's so hard to find good items. But in reality, I in some ways I share that thought. But at the same time, some of these affixes are super strong. So it's better to equip a very poor roll with the correct affix instead of a triple stat item with bad attributes. So just keep this in mind. Also, lastly, we of course have to look at the familiars here. I am using a familiar with gonna go here and look at the skills. I'm using a familiar with Lingering Wounds, and I have 200 insight, so I get the maximum value at 36.5% armor break. This is the best PvE passive skill in the game. I would like to find a new familiar which has both Lingering Wounds and the new Vigor Bloom passive skill that increases the attack speed and the damage just a little bit, but I have not been able to find it yet. I can show you this as well. Previously I've been using this pet that has both Lingering Wounds and Tenacity. And what Tenacity does is that it reduces the cooldown of your familiar's active skill. But if you think about it, and what I realized after doing some calculations is that when you reduce your cooldown on the active skill of the familiar, the Lingering Wounds will no longer line up with a lot of legendary gem effects, because the cooldown on, for example, Roiling Consequence and Mother's Lament is 20 seconds, and it's a lot more efficient if Lingering Wounds is active while I'm at top DPS, and therefore it actually makes sense to not use a familiar with Tenacity, because I want Lingering Wounds to sync with this 20-second cycle, because then the total damage output will be greater. For burst damage over a short period of time it will be the same, but if you have a longer period it will definitely increase your damage if you skip the Tenacity. So I know I've said before it's the other way around, but I've realized that Tenacity is maybe not so good after all, combined with Lingering Wounds, that is. So yeah, this is the familiars. I'm also gonna show you quick my secondary attributes. 1 second here. If I go here, you can see here are my secondary attributes, and I've been focusing quite a lot on potency because the potency increases the harmful effect durations, and I've already explained why this is important. And I've also focused on armor penetration, which increases my critical hit damage. And I have a very high critical hit chance, and therefore critical hit damage will be even more efficient. So yeah, this is what the build looks like. So let's take a look on how it performs at the training dummy. So what we're doing first here is that we have pre-spawned the clones from the Echoing Shade, because this is something we can usually do before a dungeon boss, for example. And then we are good to go. And you can see here that the damage output is crazy, and we end up almost at 24.5 million DPS over 5 seconds. So this holds up extremely well against all the other classes. I have not been able to perform any better for a 5-second solo dummy run. So the Crusader ranks maybe the best, top 3 for sure. It's a tight race between Necromancers, Demon Hunters and Crusaders right now for PvE, in my opinion. But what we also can take a look at before leaving now is the breakdown of this build when we look at the damage output. And we can see here that the most damage comes from the Fire Banner, but we can't awaken any of the essences, so it increases the damage output of Fire Banner. But in second place here we can see that we have Sacred Fire, and in third place we have Judgment. So that's why, if we take a look here on my awakenings, we can see here that I have chosen to awaken the 2 main hands and 1 of the off hands, and all of them will increase the damage done by Sacred Fire. I have also chosen to increase the damage of Judgment by 10% by awakening my shoulders, and I have also increased the damage done by Condemn by awakening the chest here. The chest piece is not so important to awaken, but you get the point here how to prioritize. And of course, if there was a way to increase the damage of Fire Banner, I would do so through the awakenings. I of course also want to say that I understand that a lot of players will not be able to awaken any of their slots, but I think it's still interesting for those of you who can, so that you know what you should focus on. So yeah, I mean, this was the build. I really enjoyed to play it. There are some alterations that you can do if you run out in a dungeon. For example, I would possibly switch out the Light Striders here for the new horse that also buffs your teammates and their movement speed. Or I would switch out this essence for the offhand that gives movement speed when you're under the influence of the banner. And in that case I would also switch out this shoulder essence for the Folly of Sacrum that increases the duration of Holy Banner. But I've already released a video about that build, so if you're interested I urge you to check it out. because maybe it will show you some great tips on how to run the dungeon with the Crusader. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and we can conclude for sure that many of the new essences for the Crusader has been very useful when it comes to increasing the damage output. And until next time, I hope you have a very good time, and I want to wish you a nice day or a nice evening wherever you are. And of course, to all of my clan members in Nyx, I would also like to say Voruk Nyx, Sholak Sol. So, bye bye!